The adventure begins with the growing popularity of the fantasy tabletop RPG Dungeons and Dragons. To play the game, all you really need is a character sheet and some dice. The problem is pre-gens of Dungeons and Dragons can be pretty bad sometimes, be very basic, and overall not you. The whole point of a role-playing game is to play a character that you become invested in and can enjoy. So, you need a character sheet. Simple character sheet, all you need is the actual template for it itself, a pencil, and a little information that you can all find online. And you too can create a functioning D&D character that you can bring into your next session, be it a wizard, a sorcerer, a dashing rogue, whatever one-of-a-side experience that you want for your character. So your first thing that you want to decide before you go into it is what your basic stats are you're going to pick. And these stats are strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. And to remember these, or more understand what they are, we have the tomato test. So, strength. How many tomatoes your character can carry? Dexterity. How good your character is at throwing said tomatoes at people. Constitution. How many tomatoes he can get hit with when they inevitably start throwing back. Intelligence, knowing that a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom, knowing that doesn't mean it goes in a fruit salad. And charisma, being able to sell said tomato-based fruit salad. So for a beginner, your stats that you have in D&D, you have a primary stat that your class has. For example, wizards, their spellcasting modifier comes from intelligence, so you should probably put your highest stat into intelligence. A fighter will have its highest stat, its primary stat be strength, so you should probably put the highest amount to be strength. As a rule of thumb, constitution should be one of your higher ones, only because just everyone can use some hit points, which we'll get into later. Next thing that'll make the majority of your character overall will be your class. So a class is really what gives you your abilities, your main skill abilities, attacks, and for example, it will decide if you are a spellcaster, a martial, or a hybrid. It will decide if you are casting spells, swinging a great axe, speaking to animals, casting spells out of bongos. Your class is truly what gives you all your power and makes up probably about 70% of what you do at early levels. So for simplicity's sake, we are going to start this at level 1. This goes up to level 20, but we don't want to overcomplicate things to start with. Next thing you want to keep in mind is your race. So races have two primary things: racial abilities and racial bonuses. So every single race in D&D has a bonus. So, for example, a half-orc will give you a bonus to strength and constitution. As previously mentioned, a fighter would be really good with strength, and that would be primary stats list. We'll get a nice bonus stat. If you're playing a fighter, an absolutely amazing stat would be a half-orc. But also, they give racial abilities. For example, in half-orc again, you get something called brutal critical, which basically just means you roll more damage, and dark vision, which lets you help see in the dark. These vary from race to race and just give you fun little abilities that will differentiate your character more and can make for an easier or more complex backstory. Speaking of backstory, you have your background. Backgrounds give you proficiency in things such as skills, tools, or equipment. They are basically what your character did before he got here. Was he a noble in a loyal house? Was he a sailor? Was he a street urchin that did nothing but eat beans and talk to goats and watch the world be consumed by hellfire before learning he could summon himself? Or whatever. And this is decided by your background. A lot of times backgrounds are more what your character is for a roleplay purpose of I was this or I was that, and that decides your character. Less a power level because they usually only decide skills, which isn't all that amazing. And finally, we have hit points and equipment. Hit points are what keeps you going when that goblin gets a stab at you with his dagger. So these are determined by your class and your constitution modifier. Say, for example, you have a +2 to constitution because you put it as one of your higher stats. And you're playing a barbarian, and then that gives you a 12 to hit points. You'll see that when you look up your character and the information. And that'll give you at level 1. That means that you have 12 plus 2, which means you have 14 hit points. Then those can be healed to short rest, such that's less of a character creation thing and more of a character playing thing. And next up, you have starting equipment. This is, again, one of those things you'll just look in your book and you'll transcribe it. It's all right there. It'll say, hey, you get chainmail. Hey, you get a martial sword. You get a traveler's pack, yada, 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 yada. And you also get some gold. Yes, you can spend this gold to further customize your character. Maybe you want to pick up some holy water. Maybe you want to silver your weapon. Maybe you want to pick up a bear trap or whatever. But these are not at all necessary to create a functioning character. And I'd recommend getting a session or two to feel out about what your actual playstyle is and such before spending all your money on something. This is much more customizable later level, and you're probably investing in magic items and such. But again, level 1, you don't need to worry about that. And that is all you need. So there you go, folks. You have the finished project. You are now able to play 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, or at least have a character that you can do it, and live up all your fantasies of living out a fantasy world in the great world of Tal'Dorei. Now all you have to do is find a dungeon master that wants to put up with your schedule. Thank you.